with demand expected to come back, the question remains, does this mean the economy is back on track?
Companies now, after experimenting with offshore in places like India, Philippines, and Poland, want to bring those jobs back.
We invest in the U.S. We're the biggest exporter in the country. In the cycle we're in right now, we're creating jobs.
From Radio America, it's Neil Asbury's Made in America, the show that explores American industry, large and small, and promotes American-made products everywhere. Put Neil Asbury's Made in America to work for you.
A very big welcome to you today. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. Hey, Rich, we were very, very happy last week to announce that we have 2 new affiliates joining our show. And this week, I'm happy to announce my book, Mapping America, made the weekend review of the New York Times. And it made the list as one of the top visual books of 2021. So very, very pleased about that. We've been doing a lot of events at the Smithsonian, the American Antiquarian Society. We got several more lined up. The book is just doing really, really well. I mean, and I got to tell you, when the New York Times puts you on their list and recommends a book, it is very, very powerful. It's the most powerful recommendation you can get. Now, I don't agree with the New York Times politically. I mean, they're so far out there. But I got to tell you, as an author, they really have a monopoly on this.
Well, I feel good about it. It's nice to know that the elites of the United States are going to be reading your book, which is nice. You know, I'm excited for you.
And it's a very, very beautiful book about the story of our country, our shared history. So hopefully we can agree on that. Something that unites us instead of divides us.
If only that book was around when Columbus was doing his thing. That would have been interesting, you know?
Well, you know, we start actually in the late Middle Ages.
He could have done seminars for the guys on a ship on his way over.
And we go through that period, the early Renaissance, through the American Revolution, and finally the founding of the United States. A beautiful, beautiful book.
I always wanted to know, how did Columbus keep it together on the ship? I mean, you're dealing with guys who never went to kindergarten. So I'm just wondering what they were thinking as they're going over the horizon. You know what I mean? Little difficult, but I'm very proud of him.
They had some mighty convincing disciplinary actions.
I mean, just saying. All right, let's go on. This is important.
Here we go. Right. It is very important.
I'm excited.
We're going to talk about energy and the hypocrisy of the Biden administration, and how this has really hurt American small businesses and entrepreneurs, because our small businesses, entrepreneurs in the energy industry are absolutely incredible. They've done amazing things to make us energy sufficient, actually making us an energy exporter under President Trump. All of this technology and things that we've developed in this country, you know, is really incredible, keeping gas prices, energy prices low. And now, of course, President Biden comes in, he gets rid of the Keystone Pipeline, and he approves the one from Russia to Western Europe. And now his national security advisor, Jake Sullivan, says to OPEC, please produce more, produce more, produce more, produce more. Well, why aren't we doing that here? Let's bring on our first guest, Jason Maglin. He is the president of the Texas Alliance of Energy Producers. Jason, welcome to Made in America.
Well, thank you so much for having me today.
So the hypocrisy of this, our national security advisor, I mean, this is a very, very senior man in the administration, basically egging OPEC on to produce more fossil fuels. I mean, isn't that the height of hypocrisy?
We're not egging them on, begging them to increase production overseas in Russia, in Saudi Arabia, in Venezuela, and not looking here at home, where we certainly have excess capacity, that where we could increase production and help American consumers pay a little less at the pump.
Well, I do find it absolutely astounding that wasn't it just about 8-9 months ago we were energy independent? Wasn't it the fact that we were employing hundreds and thousands of people around the country and way up into Alaska in the energy business? Weren't we able to provide inexpensive, constant, and sustainable energy, which is very important for our economy? And more importantly, from a security point of view, which I find astounding that the Biden administration doesn't seem to care about it, so I really want to know why, that we were leveraging Russia. The one thing that Russia had going for itself was the selling energy. It was a big fight that President Trump had with Europe, saying, we're protecting you through NATO. You're getting a pipeline from Russia. You're buying natural gas and oil from Russia. What is that all about? So we were able to meet that threat with leveraging the energy, exporting of energy. So, Jason, where did we go wrong on this?
Well, you're absolutely right. In 2019, we became energy independent. First time in 70 years that we produced more than we imported, and we certainly had that. And then COVID happened, and we've seen kind of a double whammy of economic pressures on producers here to reduce their workforce to produce less, and then coupled that with just an onslaught of new regulatory proposals. Congress is proposing raising taxes on domestic producers. All of that is negative for oil and gas producers. And then we see these types of requests for producers outside of the United States, OPEC Plus, to produce more. It's just infuriating. And in particular, we can solve these issues here. Our neighbor to the north, our number one trading partner in Canada, has resources that we can access through the Keystone Pipeline. But unfortunately, that was canceled as well. And so we've seen a rejection of domestic producers, of Canadian producers, in favor of Russia, Saudi Arabia, and Venezuela.
So, Jason, you're the president of the Texas Alliance of Energy Producers, and I got to believe in Texas and in Louisiana and Oklahoma, the neighboring states, that there are so many people employed in the energy industry and so many entrepreneurial businesses and small businesses that are there because of the energy industry and the good jobs that they produce. And can you give us a little bit of what is the impact on these folks by importing our energy versus having them make it for us?
It's remarkable. One of the policies that we're actively contesting right now is the leasing moratorium, the leasing ban on federal lands. And if you look at Texas, we don't have a great deal of federal lands, but we have a tremendous amount of offshore lands that are leased to produce oil and gas in the Gulf of Mexico. The American Petroleum Institute estimated that 200,000 jobs alone in Texas would be negatively impacted if this ban continues. We've been successful in federal courts to really try to rein in the administration, get them to say either yes, we're going to move forward and allow these lands that Congress has mandated be leased, or no, we're not going to do it. And if we're not going to do it, then we've got a case to be made that they're violating federal law. But unfortunately, the policy that we're getting right now is slow rather than no, and that's resulting in some tremendous heartache for producers that are willing to produce here. The capacity of Texas right now, we are off from what we were producing in 2019 by about 20%. The nation as a whole is down significantly from the peak that we had of 13 million barrels a day to about 11.2 million barrels a day today. That capacity could be met here in the United States. And yet we're getting pleas from Mr. Sullivan that producers outside of the United States increase their production. And that undermines us here in the United United States. It also, for an administration that claims to be wanting to help the environment, protect the environment, what they're doing, in fact, is relying on producers from other countries with lower environmental standards to supply our energy needs here in the United States. And whether that's wind and solar implements built and manufactured with coal-fired power plants in China, or it's relying on natural gas from Russia that flares and emits at rates 10x from what the United States does. It's unbelievable that just the environmentalists that support this president would agree with some of his policies.
Well, it's very interesting. President Biden was out talking about his economic policies and how great he's doing and all the millions of jobs he's created. And he's talking about the energy. He was very worried because the optics of people going to the gas pump and paying $1.50, $1.40 more than it did just a short time ago is very bad. I'd like you to listen to this soundbite, how the president obfuscates the reasons for it, and then let's have a conversation. Go ahead and play this bite.
We're taking action to address gas prices as well. Today, gas prices are lower than they were early in this decade, but they're still high enough to create a pinch on working families. One key thing about the infrastructure bill that just passed the Senate is there are no gas tax increases. No gas tax increases. I made that absolutely clear that I would not raise gas taxes.
Yeah, but you're increasing prices.
Right, exactly.
Isn't that a tax?
So
if it goes up $2 a gallon because of the world market and because we're not producing here in this country and these countries around the world that don't have our best interests at heart and they're increasing the prices, the consumer's paying these prices whether it's a tax or not.
Well, and let me talk to you about bread taxes. So the American Farm Bureau has said if you limit pipeline production, if you shut down pipelines, you force those oil producers to use the train cars and the rail cars. And what that does is that raises prices on grain producers. The American Farm Bureau looked at the impact of shutting down some pipelines in the breadbasket of America, and they said it would raise grain prices by $1 billion. That is the exact type of thing that we're talking about here. When we're seeing inflation, when we're seeing gas prices increase, what we need to be doing is looking to domestic producers to increase supply. And we are willing to do it. We're wanting to do it. But we're looking at two pretty looming challenges from this administration. The environmental side of raising environmental regulation, forcing more businesses to bear those costs, and that results in less capital development here in the United States. And the second is Congress debating raising taxes on domestic producers. They're not suggesting that for overseas producers because certainly they don't have the authority to do that, and yet they're willing to risk those types of impacts on domestic producers. It's appalling, and I think consumers are seeing this at the pump, and they're understandably voicing their criticism.
Hey, Jason, thanks for being on the show. Very, very, very great comments. Very great comment. Very insightful. Really appreciated. Jason Maglin, president of the Texas Alliance for Energy Producers. Stay tuned. We'll be back on this topic, I'm sure, sometime in the near future. But for now, Dr. Rich and I are going to be back in a moment with some more headlines and news to report.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. So, Rich, we're talking about energy, and, it was interesting. Jason made a interesting connection between if you're not building this pipeline, right, to very efficiently move energy from Canada, in this case, to Keystone, to the Gulf, to where all these big refineries are in Texas, Louisiana, and then to process there. But yet instead of that, you're putting it on rail. You're putting it on rail, which, by the way, it's just not nearly as safe. I mean, the rail system and having the idea of environmental issues and spills and all of that. But you're taking up the capacity on the rail system that could be used for goods like grain and other commodities to get them to market very efficiently. And it increased the costs. I guess that's a really, really great observation. You're taking up the capacity to move energy very inefficiently, and you're taking away the capacity to move food efficiently. So, I mean, boy, is that upside down or what? But what does this all do? It leads to inflation. It leads to inflation. Boy, are we seeing inflation. And CNN actually reported something this past week was actually the truth, and they talked about inflation. And this is CNN talking about inflation where the government says, the administration says, there is no inflation, or it's very temporary. Let's listen to this.
Confirming, John and Brianna, what anybody who has bought anything already knows, prices for just about everything are going up. In the month, up 0.5% from June to July. That's a steep 1 month move. When you strip out the volatile food and energy sectors, an inflation gain of 0.3%. But I like to look at it year over year so you get a sense of just how much more expensive things are today than they were a year ago. And inflation up 5.4%. You saw a similar increase last month, so that's 2 months of really hot inflation numbers.
And Rich, I mean, that's hitting not only our consumers, it's hitting our businesses. Let me tell you, to make anything in this country right now, to provide a service in this country, costs are just escalating.
Well, yeah. I mean, in what I find interesting is that the administration just will not accept the fact that, that we have inflation and it's here. It's a highest it's been in about 14 years. It seems to be consistent. It's growing. As just pointed by CNN, I'm stunned. CNN actually told the truth. And she must have gotten fired right after that. But they actually told the truth. We're seeing month after month after month, increase month by year, going in the wrong direction. And listen, I got to tell you something. Anybody who goes to a supermarket and week after week, and we do that as well, and I was stunned the other day that Gloria and I went in to, we weren't even buying a lot of food. Because we buy a lot of food prepared because Gloria's horrible in the kitchen. That's just a fact. We can talk about that some other time. But we spent a fortune buying non-food items. Non-food items. So how does a family of 2 or 3 children in the United States right now, a young family, make it when it's going up so quickly? Week after week, you're seeing big changes. Whether it's going to be, I look at beef is very expensive, chicken's very expensive, and you're right. One of the reasons is because it's costing so much to get it to market. And I think you're right. I think the last guest that we had made a very interesting connect-the-dot moment. And that is, it's not just a question of shipping it by rail, which is dangerous anyway for oil. We always hear about derailments, You could start the sentence, Amtrak today, and then finish the rest of it. It's replacing the ability to ship grains and products that are agricultural oriented. So it just seems like we're out of whack right now, and we can have it under control, but we don't.
Well, let me tell you how it impacts businesses, and this is not just me. I mean, it's impacting everybody. Right now, the cost of materials, raw materials, and specifically resins. Where does resins come from? It comes from crude. It comes from fossil fuels. And what happened in Texas and the refinery plants there already were under severe pressure because of the weather problems that they had earlier in the year. But now, they have actually issues with the prices of crude oil increasing significantly, the supply of crude oil increasing significantly. And why? We heard from Jason, I mean, our production is down 2 million barrels a day over the last year. So it's hard to get resin. And I'm an injection molder. A lot of products I manufacture come from molding plastics. And ABS is one of the materials we use. Polycarbonate, which is one of the materials we use, coming from Texas, is being rationed right now. the actual commodity of resins that's used in injection molding for American manufacturing of many, many different things. In my case, appliances, I'm being rationed on how much resin I can get. So what does that do for my ability to create jobs and add people? So if I'm having problem getting resin, but over in China, they have all the resin in the world that they need, and they're not having problems getting resin. What does that mean? It means that, sometimes it's better not to be in this country to build products. And I hate to say that because we're made in America and we're going to be there and we're going to fight for those jobs. But our government is just making it impossible. When you are rationing resins to make American products, you are in big, big trouble. And that's what's happening right now. Hey, we have Bill Dunkelberg from the National Federation of Independent Business. He's the chief economist coming on right now. And he's going to talk about the economy. And President Biden says it's going really, really well. Let's hear what Bill says. Stay with us.
Made in America.
Sharply higher at the open, stocks continued to perform well over the course of the day Tuesday.
And I think that bodes well here over the next couple of years for having bigger demands coming to this country.
Now, more of Neil Asbury's Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. Rich, just a short time ago, there was a lot of optimism of coming out of COVID and coming out of the lockdowns and people getting back to work and small businesses getting back, going to restaurants and seeing our restaurants open again. But I don't know if that optimism is there or is that optimism fading right now? And we talked a lot about inflation today. What is the impact of inflation on our small businesses? And I told you my problem in getting resins right now and all the other commodities that you need for manufacturing in this country right now, I got to tell you, are in short supply. That is zapping optimism. I got to tell you, it's zapping optimism. Let's hear President Biden right now talk about how he feels the economy is doing.
Economic growth is up, the fastest in 40 years, and unemployment is coming down. So I would argue the Biden economic plan is working.
So, Rich, I don't know what the Biden economic plan is. I think, is it just like to kind of to be standing there when, letting the Trump sort of policies play out? I don't know. But let's bring on Bill Dunkelberg. He's the chief economist since 1970 at the National Federation of Independent Business. Bill, welcome to Made in America.
Oh, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to join you.
So what do you think about the comment, the Biden economy is doing really great?
Well, I guess you can call it his economy. And, using historical measures like real GDP growth, it is going great. That's because, of course, it was crushed earlier in our, last year or so. So we saw a decline in GDP of 30% or so. Back in the second quarter of 2020, when the government closed everything down, and then of course we recovered a 33% rate, which is an amazing rate, unheard of, in the next quarter, because if you go down that far, you're going to bounce back, and we did. But still, we only just now reached the peak level that GDP attained early in 2021, and employment is still 6 or 7 million below the peak that we saw early in the year. So we had an unemployment rate of 3.5%. Back in those days, and now we're at 5.4, down from 5.7 last month, but 5.4 is still a little high. So, everything's not back, And so, whether or not it's really surging depends on, the time period you pick to measure it over and how far back you want to go.
So, Rich, what do you think about the optimism in the market right now?
Well,
economy?
I find it interesting that, President Biden, look, I understand he's the president. Things are happening under his, ruling, because he rules, evidently, with all these executive orders. He does. I mean, he just says you can and you can't. It's sort of like, back in the 1700s. But, okay. But, so what do I think about it? I don't know. Why did I hear so many people saying, if Biden actually did nothing, the economy would rebound on its own? All you have to do is release the economy, let it happen. The states were suppressing the economy, particularly the blue states, with all these numbers of people at these urban centers, and they weren't allowed to go back to work. That hurt the economy dramatically. So if you just opened up the economy, you'd have people getting back to work. So the question is it really Biden's economy? I mean, is it Biden's economy? Is it going to really, really, really work well? If it is, why do we have more jobs than people that want to go back to work right now?
So, but why
What's
is
that point?
I mean, you talk about inflation, and I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a manufacturer. I can't get people to work. And you just mentioned that unemployment is substantially higher than it was pre-COVID. And I know you just go anywhere in our country, you see help wanted signs everywhere. I mean, everywhere. Just it's everywhere. Every geographic area of the country that I've been in, I've been to a lot over the last couple of weeks. So why is that? Why is it? You're chief economist. Why is it that we got like all these people unemployed and help wanted signs everywhere?
Right. Our 300,000 members all tell us the same thing, that their need for workers is at a 47-year, 48-year high. That's when we started the surveys back in 1973. So labor markets are very, very tight. Workers aren't coming out to play. And one of the reasons, of course, is that they're afraid of COVID. Can't blame them for that. Another is that child care is not available at the moment because schools are not back in session. So that impairs a lot of the female entry especially. So that's a problem. Another issue is that the government pays you so much money not to work. In many states, you can make much more money staying on unemployment than you can getting a $15 an hour job. Those kinds of things tend to stand in the way of getting people back on the job. You have a longer run issue about a mismatch. Yes, we have as many job openings as we have unemployed people, but it's the skill set. Does the skill set match up? And that may have changed substantially with the 2 years of COVID experience that we've had, and the change in technologies that small businesses have been implementing to help them get through the labor shortage.
So I'd like to bring Rich on this. And Rich, what I think, this is scary. This is scary. Fox News poll. A majority of registered Democratic voters prefer socialism to capitalism by 59 to 49%. I mean, with people not working right now at these sort of very historically high rates, considering the amount of jobs that we have, is this socialism? Is this the start of socialism? Is this the impact of socialism, Rich?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you think about that, if you look at the $3.5 trillion deal and the $1.2 trillion deal, and you look at all the Green New Deals, and you look at, this is the Bernie Sanders deal. I mean, who's driving the show right now? Well, probably Obama, but Bernie Sanders is getting what he wants in this. And if you think about what's out there, that we're giving all this money for all these programs, whether it's breakfast programs, whether it's time off programs, whether it's sending kids to pre-K, whether it's paying for college, there's something is leading us into a very strong socialized environment. And to me, I keep hearing in neon in my brain, universal income. And this is something that those on the far left, the Bernie Sanders, supporters have been wanting for a long, long time. They've been pushing it with minimum wage. I think we're going in a very, very slippery slope. And I got to tell you, I think this really falls under the concept of guaranteed income from the federal government. And that worries me a lot.
Well, Rich, you're going to get the last word.
It's a dangerous place that we're headed into because we don't, all the stuff that government is promising sounds really good, and so we vote for them, or we tell them we tell the pollster that we like socialism, but obviously we never paid attention to what socialism really is in our world and our history. Otherwise, we would be totally opposed to what the government is trying to do, and we'd be happy to have the private economy, which open up again, which is the best stimulus we could get. We'd like to see that happen. Instead, let the private sector do its job.
Bill, well said, and you'd get the last word. but this is a scary thing. Bill Dunkelberg, National Federation of Independent Business. He's been the chief economist since 1970. Folks, stay with us. Dr. Rothman and I are going to be right back.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. So, Rich, there's a lot of emotion right now about mandates and masks and getting a vaccine or not getting a vaccine and who could go to work and who can't go to work and
who's essential and who's not essential.
Right. And it's really hard. I mean, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, trying to figure this out and then trying to figure out, how to keep yourself out of legal jeopardy, as if, the entrepreneurial small business community doesn't have enough problems we're talking about earlier today about supply chain, logistics, energy, inflation, regulation, just a few of the topics we hit on today, and to see what our entrepreneurs and business owners need to navigate through. And then it's, the health of our employees. Now, back, time was when, we were debating Obamacare, and that was, the health care and the type of health care that we would have for our people and what was included, what was not included. And, of course, we had a lot of debate about that. But this is much, much more serious, right? I mean, it's much more serious. Who has access to the workplace? In order for them to have access to the workplace, what must they have or do? And if someone were to get sick, how about if you mandated a vaccine and you mandated it and someone had a very violent reaction to it? Mm-hmm. I mean, imagine the litigation that is going to go. And believe me, it's going to happen, right? To me, I got the vaccine. It's a personal choice. I wish people got the vaccine, but I can't make them do it, right? But, I can't say you can't come to work if you don't have a vaccine. I mean, and then what's the risk for doing that? And I just think that it's unprecedented times for our entrepreneurs. And Rich, I want you to comment on Dr. Fauci and talking about freedom here and the type of freedom we have or don't have in this country.
Well, I don't think in history we've really taken away individual freedoms, although, of course, the Democrats did it in World War II, and they took all the Japanese and they put them into internment camps. They seem to forget that it was the other side of the table that did that, not our side of the table. But we have not. We're taking away your basic Bill of Rights occasionally in the last year because it was for the greater good. And Dr. Fauci, who flip-flops all the time, more than my flip-flops on the weekend, by the way, was either pro-mask and he's anti-mask, and he wants us to wear 2 masks, maybe 3 masks, and then maybe we don't need them, and then maybe if you're vaccinated, everything's going to get better. Then if you're vaccinated, it's not going to get better because you can have breakthroughs and, all the stuff. So Fauci made a comment this week regarding individual rights. And I think it's very important because that affects jobs, it affects families, it affects, just getting up every day and being an American. I think we should listen to this.
But when you're talking about local mandates for schools, for teachers, for universities, for colleges, I'm sorry. I mean, I know people must like to have their individual freedom and not be told to do something. But I think we're in such a serious situation now that under certain circumstances, mandates should be done.
Well, I just find that to be a very frightening statement, Neil. I do. I know. I mean, what a pandering. I know you like your freedoms. Really? Because I thought it said that they're inalienable. that they're our freedoms because we're born under God, who gave us these freedoms, and you can't take them away, which really separated us from the aristocratic programs that existed in Europe. We were the unique experiment, that it was going to be something that we controlled the government, and the government didn't control us. Somehow that's flipped, sort of like a Fauci. In fact, why don't we just call it, when people flip on things, why don't we call it pulling the Fauci? You know what I mean?
Well, let me tell you, talking about people flipping out, I mean, in a suburb of Nashville this week, I mean, there was a massive, almost on the verge of a riot going on at a school board meeting.
Yeah.
Where they were mandating masks for kids. And
was that the place where Clay Travis was speaking?
Yeah. That turned into quite a show. And I think this is kind of like what you're going to see, you know, going forward. It's a very emotional thing. And, you know, I just see it from the business perspective and from the entrepreneurial perspective of wanting to keep your people safe, and then having people having their personal liberties to do and live their life the way they want. And the legal jeopardy that it puts you in for trying to come down on either of those sides.
Which OSHA pointed out this last week.
Incredible. Hey, Rich, we're going to be back just in a moment. We still got a lot to talk about. You want to stay with us, folks? Dr. Rich has dug up something pretty funny here. You're going to hear a soundbite, and Dr. Rich is going to comment on it. I want you to stay with us.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. What is going on in Oregon? I mean, I got to tell you, I don't know what they're doing out there. First of all, they take one of our nation's most beautiful cities, Portland.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
And absolutely destroy it. I mean, they've absolutely destroyed it. I was out there a couple of times over the last month, and I mean, you just feel completely unsafe to be there. And I see all of these businesses in downtown Portland and just right, the suburbs next to it. And I don't know how they survive. I mean, look, they pay taxes to a government that despises them. They must despise them for them to have to live and work in that sort of an environment. And, you buy the real estate, you hire your people, you outfit your offices, you buy the technology, you set up your life's dream as an entrepreneur, and you're going to be here, and you believe in your community, and you want to support your community, you want to build your community. And this city is just absolutely taken over by anarchists. And I don't know how you could be a politician and look in the mirror and say that you're doing your job. But now she goes further.
This is the governor.
This is the governor, Governor Kate Brown, right? So she signed a bill recently ending the requirement for high school students to prove proficiency in reading, writing, and arithmetic before graduation. So, here we are, a country competing with the world. We're talking about, being the country of technology in the future. We got big competitors out there, not only from a business and an economic sense, but from a security sense. And, well, in Oregon, I don't know what you got to do to graduate high school, but you certainly don't need to know anything about math and reading and arithmetic.
No, I mean, first of all, yeah, I think to graduate, you need respiration. So they want to know if you inhalate and exhalate, that's a good thing. So you get, it's like taking your SATs, you get 200 points for signing your name, and then you got to build up the rest. It's pathetic. But, it's interesting, since they don't have to be proficient in reading, and they don't have to be proficient in math, so they don't have to worry about Dr. Seuss out there, because nobody can read it. Nobody is able to read a book.
So maybe
how do they compete?
They want to create a nation of people who can't read or write or think?
Well, let me see if I get this right. So when Rockefeller was the governor of New York, he created the state university system. The motto was, let each become all they're capable of being. This is encouraging people to learn and grow and be. And then when you go out to Oregon, Brown is saying, well, you don't have to read and you don't have to add. 2 and 2 is 5. Close. We'll give you some points for that. Creative, but not exactly correct. But we like you a lot. We're going to get, in fact, I like you so much, I'm going to give you an extra half a point because you're a nice kid.
Here's your diploma.
Here's your diploma. It just doesn't work. Listen, now that we're talking about Oregon and we're talking about, Seattle and the West Coast and out there, I got to tell you what's going on. This is happening in Starbucks. Now, we all know Ferris Bueller's Day Off. A great, funny movie. And there's a great, great scene where the teacher's asking where Ferris Bueller is. And it goes, Bueller, Bueller, Bueller. Everyone knows that. It is an iconic moment. Well, what people are doing now, they're going to Starbucks, and when the person at Starbucks, takes your order, I'd like a macchiato with whatever, and they say, name please, they're putting down Bueller, and they're writing B-U-E-L-L-B, and half the kids don't know it, some of them. So they're writing it down, and when you go to the other side of the counter, and you're waiting for your coffee, well, this is what's actually happening. Let's play this.
Bueller, Bueller, Bueller.
This is happening right now. Could be this very second. But everyone in the store, everyone knows that. And those who are, hip to the film are just laughing their body off. Just in hysterics that they're actually creating a Bueller moment. This is happening in Starbucks. I suggest people go out and try that this week and let us, see what's happening. And if it works, love to know it. Very exciting to know that. So that's the fun of the week. That's my humor moment, Neil. That I think is just hysterical.
Well, Rich, you always know how to dig up these pieces, and you are absolutely a genius in tying together the dots from Bueller to Governor Kate Brown of Oregon to the students of the great state of Oregon no longer needing proficiency in math, reading, and arithmetic. So out the door, the sciences. I don't know what do you replace it with? Illiteracy.
That's right. I never ever would expect to hear this.
Anarchist, I guess you don't need to know how to read and write. So maybe it makes sense if you're in Oregon.
You have to hit. That's what you do.
Well, Rich, unfortunately, we're out of time.
I'm going to Starbucks.
Bueller.
I'm going to let everyone know what happens. I'm going to do it this week.
But we're going to be back again next week, Rich, where you can report to us what happened at Starbucks. But for now, we're out of time. But we'll be back. And remember, we're always fighting for your jobs.